to the St. Supéry Kitchen. This is Chef Todd Kawachi. I'm here to share some tips and little cooking demonstrations that you can possibly utilize during this harvest season of summer. We happen to have our Dollarhide Ranch, beautiful estate, which has orchards on there, and there are some fantastic stone fruit that we get every year. You might have seen some of our preserves that we have in jars because we have such a glut of beautiful stone fruit, nectarines, plums, that we actually have them put into preserves, which go really well with some cheese and different dishes, and it also works really well with our Moscato. What I thought I would do is show you another way of utilizing some of our stone fruit or peaches, if you happen to have wherever you are. And so I have some of our own Dollarhide peaches. These are beautiful. What I'm going to do is take them maybe a little bit on the slightly less ripe side, not super ripe to the point where I'm going to pick it up and eat it right out of hand. As delicious and juicy as that is, I thought I would take some that were maybe just a little bit more firm and show you a roasting technique. So I'm going to put these into the oven and roast them so they develop a little bit more of that kind of caramelized flavor to them, and they soften and they cook through that way. So what you're basically going to do is utilize their oven. So turn your oven up to a really hot temperature, about maybe 450 degrees or so. If you happen to have a convection fan setting on your oven, go ahead and do that too. That's going to give it even more heat, more circulation for the browning, and that nice caramelization over the top. I'm going to actually go ahead and use a cast iron pan because they hold the heat really well. The important part about this is the pan sides are low enough that the fan and all the temperature over the top will encourage the browning. If you have too deep of a pot, like a sauce pot or something like that, a soup pot, you're not going to get that air contact over the top. So make sure it's a shallow pan. It doesn't have to be cast iron, but that's my best choice that I have in the kitchen. So any other pan that you have would work out as well. So if we go to our peaches here, just to show you, I've got some whole butter that's softened enough, and I also have some a pastry brush, so I'm going to brush that over there. I have a mixture here with some cinnamon and some sugar, so just a little bit of additional sweetness. Our peaches and stone fruit that come from the Dollarhide are already so sweet, I'm not going to add any additional sugar other than a little bit of garnish there. And then I also have some basil. This is one of my favorite combinations with basil. It sounds kind of unusual, but the savory kind of sweetness and the spice characteristic you pick up from our garden basil, I think plays off really well with peaches themselves. I also have some mascarpone cheese. So you could use whipped cream, creme fraiche. This happens to be mascarpone cheese, which is like a Italian cream cheese of sorts. It's got a nice rich characteristic to it. So I'm going to garnish it with my roasted peaches after they come out of the oven. So how do we prepare these? You basically are going to look at the peach, and you'll notice that there's always a line that runs across it. And that line is where you want to actually make your circle cut all the way across there. That way the pit will come out easier, and you find a nice way of splitting it in half. So the peaches, I basically just wipe them down so that there's no dirt on the outside. You can see that if you twist very gently, this is a stone-free peach, meaning that the stone on the inside or the pit will come out easily. So there's a nice half cut, and you should be able to pop that out pretty easily. And so sometimes we have yellow peaches, white peaches, we have nectarines, we might have plums or pluots, and any of those stone fruit will work well for this kind of preparation. Beautiful. So now I have these peaches, nice and sweet. I'm not going to add any additional sugar, but what I want to do is, number one, I'm going to brush a little bit onto the bottom of my pan. And then the rest of this softened butter, I'm going to baste over the top for a little extra love. And also the milk solids on top there will add a nice browning, so it'll get toasty and buttery. Good amount on there. It's going to melt over the top, kind of baste. You might have a puddle right there inside where the pit was, which is not a bad thing. And then go ahead and arrange your peaches so that they're staying flat. If your pan is the right size, or if you need more peaches, go ahead and put them in so that they're not tipping, so that all the goodies will stay inside there. And then the next thing I'll do is take a little bit of our cinnamon sugar mixture here. You could put other spices in there if you wanted to, maybe some ginger or something like that. Cloves go really nicely, just a little bit. I kind of want to just accent it over the top crust of flavor, but the real deliciousness is in the actual flesh and the pulp and the juice of the fruit itself. Always super sweet. And so now from here, they're basically ready to go into the oven, and I'm going to put this into the extremely hot oven and let it roast for maybe about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I'm going to take a look at the top to make sure that I've got some good caramelization, but yet it's not so far cooked to the point where the peaches have lost their texture. So that's why it's important to have a preheated hot oven, so that it's more about the hot surrounding heat that kind of cooks and browns from the top versus overcooking on the inside. So our peaches were done. I took a look at the top after a few minutes. This is pretty close to about 12 minutes. Again, we have different varieties of stone fruit that come from Dollarhide, and I happen to do some other types of peaches as well. So we have white peaches, we have pluots, etc. But basically, they are all finished. They're nice and caramelized. They've got this beautiful crust right over the top, that brown kind of roasty flavor. The spices on there got toasty. They also started to juice out a little bit, so they made their own syrup on the plate themselves. There's a little bit of the butter that's still in there that gave it that nice brown toastiness to it. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and garnish these. I let them sit for just a little bit so that when I put the mascarpone on there, it just doesn't melt away. So they are a little bit more like room temperature right now, or barely warm, as opposed to straight out of the oven. And so now what I'm going to do is just put a little bit of the creme fraiche right on top. Add some richness. Another great combination. And it sounds really interesting, but if you use some soft goat cheese that's whipped, you can whip some goat cheese, and that fresh chèvre along with the stone fruit is a fantastic combination, especially with our Moscato wine. If you happen to be having our Moscato and you have that as maybe an after dinner wine, because it does have some residual sugar, that's a really nice touch. So I'm going to take some of our basil that we have. I want to put a few leaves in there, so every once in a while you get the little bite of the spice. And this way you have kind of a herbaceous, kind of sweet spice to go along with it. And just a few of the basil leaves on there. That'll make a huge difference. After that, if you happen to have any cookies, you can crumble cookies over for a little crunch and crust. If you have some toasted nuts, like almonds are a fantastic thing to also go well with the peaches, so you could crumble a little bit of toasted almonds on there. I'm always like to garnish with the basil, but also we have some beautiful flowers here. These are some edible flowers from our garden. You can always decorate. Add a little color, a little interesting eye appeal to it. And that's our roasted peaches with some mascarpone, a little bit of cinnamon spice on there, and some garden basil. Hopefully that's a fantastic combination with our Moscato.